Well, here we are for another video on this basically underbelly insulation project. So I kind of started off. So this is going to be like one of two for the holding tanks that are here, and then I'm going to have probably some kind of video, maybe two videos, one video, something like that. I'm not sure yet about that last section up in the front where the Jenny and the hydraulic jacks and stuff are. I've already insulated up around inside, but I may have another video on that one altogether. So I started off with this right here, going along and like wiping all the channels out and wiping everything off to get rid of like the extensive amount of metal shavings. Like, and I never really got like all of it, right? Like this is still metal shavings, right? But at least like they're still just kind of coming off. You could be here for a year. But anyway, so I wiped them all off so that when I put that insulation on, I don't have anything that could potentially be, penetrating into these tanks. Because to be honest with you, it's not like they didn't do a good enough job on their own beating the snot out of them, big gouges in them and stuff like that. I guess they're just indestructible. But anyway, so I started off with wiping all the metal shavings and everything off of everything, because this area is a little bit more critical. Metal shavings, a little bit more critical in this area in my mind, because you have all the water lines, you have all these little tiny electrical lines for all the tanks, and you have all this potential modes of failure and everything else that could potentially be inside this section right here. All these lines, these hydraulic lines and everything, that could be a like potential area for failure. So wanted to make sure that it was as clean as we could. The next thing that I did was, you can see kind of wire ties like everywhere. Like if you notice that, like I can smack that now, it's nice and tight. I went through and tried to tie everything up. I still left a little bit of movement, because you need a little bit of movement to make it serviceable. But for the most part, like everything's tied up now. Like even this, like even though this one moves a little bit, at least it drops down right here, so the weight of it actually holds itself in place. It was kind of dangled out over here, and it was just like almost like a jump rope. I mean, that thing must have been just bobbing up and down like this going down the freeway. But anyway, so yeah, you can kind of see everything's been kind of wire tied up. It's nice and tight. Things are kind of, you can see here. Now this was theirs. I mean, good job on that one. I'm not going to knock that. But you put it this far back instead of maybe tying these together as well. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so a lot of this is just single wiring. So it's kind of all tied up, but it's just single wiring. But when you're going down the road, there's minimal movement now, instead of these things flopping up and down like a jump rope. And then obviously everything's kind of tied up here. So everything's more cinched up than it was. And then from there, I went into fuel lines. So let me start at the other side. Oh, that was probably pretty loud. So the other side, this fuel line kind of came in right here. And then technically it like just wrapped right up and over. So you can see right here. So this clamp that was here. And so that fuel line just kind of came along here, went underneath these, and then effectively you can kind of see these holes in this rail. And that's where the corrugated kind of came around. And then this fuel line right here, which one is the fuel line for the generator, like the feed line to the fuel pump. And then the other one goes back to that like carbon tank or evaporation tank or whatever you want to call it. So that you have two lines in there. Now this one right here ran on the outside of the corrugated. So the corrugated was here, and that fuel line ran in front of it all the way down through here. And I just kind of tied it back up in here with all the water lines and everything like that, because I want the 2 inches of insulation here, and then that corrugated will reattach itself. But you'll have like 2 inches of insulation. Sorry, we have 2 inches of insulation in here first, and then we'll have that corrugated against that. And it'll probably still kind of sink into these holes. Maybe not these upper holes. It'll probably be more down here. This one right here is where they just sliced these out in the corrugated, and the piece of corrugated came up and just kind of folded up like this up inside here. But there's these huge holes right here and right here in the corrugated. And then there's another huge hole there. There was another huge hole where that fuel line went through the corrugated over there. And another hole right here where this fuel line went through the corrugated, like right through here. Like up and over these, through the corrugated, back through the corrugated, and then on. And then on this side, so this is the one for the fuel station. So it comes from the back, right? And it comes from the back and it goes up to the front. And it ran through these holes, right? So that corrugated came up against this right here. And then that this fuel line that was here was up along this. So I drilled these. So each one of these right here, I pre-drilled, because not only do you have this 1/8" wall pipe that's up here, but then you have this 1/4" aluminum plate that runs down through there too. So you're not just zipping a self tapper through that. So I went ahead and pre-drilled it and then ran the tapper through it. But that'll be inside now too. And it's not about heat or anything like that. It's mostly just because I'm adding a lot to this edge here, and I'm not gonna have anywhere for that fuel line to go. But I have this really nice cavity inside here that it could be in. And I don't own any, quote unquote toys. I just don't see the utility in it. So I don't use this thing for that. I use it. I have like big, I guess I have a toy. It's a Bronco, right? But I don't use it as a toy. Like I don't go beat on it. I beat on it, but I don't beat on it, I guess. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so I ran this fuel line. Now I moved this clamp and then this clamp. So this clamp was here. Like this clamp, believe it or not, was right here. And then this one right here, I kind of rotated because it actually came in and it hooked a straight, like it came in straight, like this was the other way. And it straight 90'd here and then straight 90'd, like literally just boom, boom, right across. So this thing right here was like not this nice little smooth S that it is here. It was literally like, it was almost like this was fixed line, right? That's how hard those kinks were. There's no way. Now, I've never used the fuel station, right? There's no way that and that was not kinked. Like, there's no way that fuel would have went through there. Like, I've worked on cars. Like, if this was a vacuum line, like, I'd have no transmission, right? Or if this was, a pinched vacuum line, that carburetor's running super rich. I'm not getting any vacuum out of it. Probably not even going to open the secondaries, right? So, anyway, so I guess what I'm getting at is, like, this is kind of not cool. That's probably why a lot of times these fuel stations don't work right out of the gate, is you might want to get underneath and actually have a look at these fuel lines and make sure they're not actually pinched or kinked. But anyway, so I don't have any problem running it up in here because when it got down there anyway, there was a hole. So let me zip on down there. So this is where it goes up to the fuel station, but right here is where it kind of came along and then it like went through the floor right here. So if it was good enough there, it's good enough for me to run, all up through here as far as I'm concerned. Now this is the vent. So you can kind of see where they kind of wedged that up above the tank. And then this is a vent that goes in that fuel station cabinet. It's in the front of it. I can only assume that if it gets full of fuel or vapor or something like that, this is kind of like a liquid or vapor line in the bottom of the tank. It's actually just siliconed in there. So if you jerked on it real hard, you'd probably just pull it right out. This is that plastic floor, or I guess it's fiberglass with like really dense material in the middle and then fiberglass on top again. And this is your bay floor right here. So that's kind of what this looks like. And then this is what holds your tank from sliding back and forth. That's like 1/8", just aluminum. But they're not on both sides. It's just on this one side on all three corners. So anything, whatever, the only thing that's holding these tanks from sliding forward when you slam on the brakes and stuff is that little plate. So don't have them full, huh? Anyway, so another area of concern are these. So these are just cut through this channel through with a hole saw. So this has, so you can hear that, it's got a really gnarly edge on all of these. Now I think that this line right here must maybe it's for the winterization, like it's a drain line. But and then this one right here, this is your water line coming in. So this is going to be probably to fill the tank, and then in addition to filling the tank, it's also the one that comes from the tank. So to the tank, from the tank. And then, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, and then this one is like the black tank rinse. Like, so this one goes from that up there down to the rinse out your black tank, and then this is your trailer brakes, right? And then this is your two fuel lines, or not fuel, sorry, one is fuel to the Jenny, and the other one is like the vapor line from the generator back, which goes up through here, and then up through there, and then there's that conduit comes in, then it comes around here and goes up into that switch, right, where it switches from Jenny to shore power or whatever, automatic switch. Anyway, so I didn't change this here, but you can see how twisted up that is. They've done that quite a bit through here. I'm assuming that just when they just wrenched them down, that they just torqued the snot out of them. So I'm pretty sure that's not awesome. I might actually take that loose, straighten it out before I put the insulation on here. Okay, so now we'll move on to insulation. So I did insulate. Let me spin around here. I'm trying to do my best to actually keep the camera kind of on a straight line, like looking up and looking at a straight line. So I apologize if it's not doing that. Trying to do my best to give you guys an idea of what these things look like underneath, or if you want to make changes to them like I'm doing. I don't care to modify anything. I mean, it needs to be the way I want it. Even if factory made something, it may not be awesome, and you always end up modifying something to make it the way you want it. And I fully believe in making it the way that you want it. And we really need to get away from this whole, well, it's disposable. Well, I'm going to own it for a couple of years and get rid of it or something like that. Stuff is way too expensive now to have that kind of attitude. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, so I insulated these walls right here. Now this is going to be, so this is, yeah, this completely ripped out. You can see it there. It just totally ripped out because this is where they mounted it. This is where it is on the frame. So, like, it can mount up there like that. But that's the natural position. Like, there's springs. Oh, don't get sidetracked. So, I insulated this whole perimeter wall because this area here is going to be a tertiary area for me to actually insulate. Remember, this is the whole area where it has the generator, and I insulated those walls and the generator, and way up in top, and well, way up in top, and then all up in the walls here and everything. And I'll end up putting insulation on this wall, probably on this wall too, and then putting 2 inches of insulation at the bottom of this thing. But this being the generator housing, this is where not only the exhaust, but this is where all the hot air comes from the Jenny. So I may try to use this as a circulation method or something like that. I don't know if you guys remember heatilators on wood furnaces. I may try to utilize that kind of thing to maybe put a little heat up in here. But honestly, that generator gets pretty warm. So I probably end up just building some duct work out of aluminum sheet like this, and kind of boxing this whole thing in so that it exits right out the bottom of it like it should. Anyway. I'm not going to get into that. That'll be a different video. So I insulated this whole perimeter. Wow, this new creeper is pretty sweet. It rolls everywhere. The other one used to like fight me everywhere. Now this one like rolls in directions I don't want it to. Anyway, so I insulated all the way down through here. I insulated along this. So because that that tube is right there, which is what is actually holding this up. I can only insulate so far, but this beam right here, not this, well, this one too, but this right here is the main structural beam. That's the one that's literally where your siding and stuff is like glued onto, right? So I need to make sure that I have some kind of barrier between the absolute cold outside and in here, or hot out there and in here, like that kind of thing. So I know that I keep talking about cold, but heat is an issue in these things too, right? Like when they get hot outside and stuff, it just kind of starts cooking everything in here. And if everything in here is really hot, you have a lot more trouble heating or cooling the inside. So it's kind of dual purpose what's going on here. Anyway, so I insulated all the way down through here. Now this one, this is another beam here. Now this is a structural beam. This one right here goes all the way across, like all the way across to the other side. That's this one right here. And that one goes the entire length of the rig from side to side. So I'm assuming that this one's another structural member. No gusseting, you know, let's don't gusset this, right? There's no aluminum gusset in here to reinforce this section right here, even though if it runs from one side to the other, then obviously there is some load carrying capacity here. And if that's the case, then, I mean, maybe gusset it here or gusset it here, but pick one side or the other and at least do it, right? Because I'm going to leave this open a little bit, I'm probably actually going to come in and gusset this myself. There's been a lot of areas in the whole thing, and I have not shown any of that to anybody. I've mostly just focused on this insulation. That right there I had to put in because the gap between this beam and that beam right there is way too big. And I didn't really think about it. I really thought that they'd be okay, but I should have maybe just put another one in the middle of it, because these are too flimsy to hold up the corrugated and one piece of insulation. So I ended up not sticking it in between each one of the pieces of aluminum. I actually just stuck it to this whole thing and then stuck the whole thing up. And so these are a little bit longer screws. They worked out really well. And then this rail, so the insulation stops like right next to where this rail is, where that lip is on this anyway. And the rail sucks right up next to it like that. It's pretty nice, actually. I do like the fact that they did this. I mean, kudos. That's pretty awesome, because it goes right against this channel, or this like facade. Goes right against that piece right there. Actually gives it kind of a nice little aesthetic look, you know, when you're looking at it from this side or whatever. I actually like that quite a bit. When it's clean, this looks really nice when it's clean. It would actually look really cool polished. But anyway. Okay, so let's jump back to, you know, really what we're working on here, which is the holding tank area. So this one right here, because I put that fuel filter in there like that, this one's like heavily pieced together. Like this is one solid piece, but everything else is kind of pieced together. Because if you look at where this is right here, that means that this whole wall right here is exposed to elements. So I wanted to make sure that we were totally covered there. And then again, this is exposed to elements. The back of this is totally exposed to elements. So is this, because that corrugated will come against this. But I want some kind of factor here. And so I cut these pieces. Now each one is kind of in pieces down through here because it made it easier. But there is a piece along that entire lip right there. And the reason for that is the piece of corrugated coming from like this tank area comes up, and it comes up against this piece right here, and then it screws in, right? And I've got some marks on here where this valve is, so that I ensure the fact that when I put a screw through this, if I put a screw through this, that I don't hit that valve. Because although I have that piece of insulation in there, I actually cut it way back, because that valve's down in there. Like, she's way down in there. There's not enough space. Like, it's in another video if you go watch one. There's barely like a half an inch or even 3/8 of an inch between this valve and this piece of aluminum right here. So this one right here I actually dished out and shoved underneath here so that there was some kind of insulation underneath this valve. But anyway, so these are all fully insulated, or not, yeah, fully insulated along this whole lip. Right. then this one looks a little better. And then this corner was easier to deal with. And then again, it's up through here. And then it does go along this whole perimeter wall, all the way down through there. And the goal here is, I mean, basically, like I said, this one is the exterior wall. Like, there's your exterior, right? So this is your exterior carrying beam. And I wanted to make sure that there was at least this much insulation between this wall, which is gonna get cold or gonna get hot, and these water lines. So we have had one experience. We haven't had any experience in the cold yet. This is gonna be her maiden voyage in like 9 days from when I took this video. Maybe not when I posted it, but from when I actually recorded the video. I have about 9 days before we actually leave. Now we are headed to like California, but we are leaving out of Idaho to California, and right now there's tons of winter storms and stuff like that. That's basically just, you know, in an area, and nothing against drivers or anything like that, but through the whole middle section of the country right now, there's like apparently storms that nobody's ever dealt with in their entire life, which is like ice and snow. Lived in Tennessee for like 10 years, right? And so if it ever got like freezing there, the road was just a sheet of ice, right? And I grew up in Idaho, so like we had black ice here. And in the process of that whole thing, right, you kind of understand, you know, that ice is ice, right? So you may be able to get started, but can you get stopped? And that's kind of the big thing to think about is, you know, don't exceed your ability to stop. And so if you need to drive 10 miles an hour, you're driving 10 miles an hour. But hopefully everybody's doing good. You know, accidents suck. I've been in a couple myself. And my wife's been in a couple. My wife's been in accidents where she wasn't paying attention. She got hurt pretty bad, and it really sucked. But, you know, anyway. So here we go. Nice and insulated. The next step for me at this point in time right now, yeah, see how I've had to kind of piece stuff together. Anyway, so my next step, now that I feel like we're all sealed up here, everything's looking really good, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit. So since I have everything kind of wrapped up here, I'm just going to put both layers on the corrugated. And when I put both of those layers on the corrugated, I'm just going to screw it up. And there is no support between here and the other side across these tanks. So I may use some plumber's tape and put maybe 2 strips of plumber's tape across here. Not stainless, but like the plastic stuff. And just to kind of support this corrugated a little bit. If I have the ability to do it, like if I have the space without it looking trashy, I'm probably going to put a piece of 2x1 1/8-inch wall, like right in the dead center across this, because it'll be supported here and on that end, and then on the 2 sides, but right in the dead center here, it probably wouldn't be too bad to actually have some decent support. But if I go with the plumber's tape, I'll probably put 2 strips of plumber's tape in here. And that'll be another video. Like I'll kind of show the finished project so you guys can kind of see it. Nobody actually got to see this project finished. You can see she's pretty puffy, but that's all insulated. It is just awesome. It's absolute. You can see it's a little bouncy, right? That's why I put that piece in, because that's where the one rail is right there, and then the other rail is that far apart, and it's too far. It's too far of a span. See, it's kind of flimsy. I mean, it's fine, but it's flimsy to me. But once you get back here, the channels are closer together, and it's way more solid. And you can see even the insulation kind of poking out around these. Like that all turned out pretty good. These ones right here, in order to keep that hole as small as possible. Now this is the factory hole that they cut in here, but you can see that they had it cut way back in here. Probably to stick this whole thing through, including the valve. I just popped the nut off of this and pulled this off, and it was just this shaft that we covered up. So that worked out a lot better. These ones right here with the insulation and everything else in here ended up being kind of stubby. which is probably fine with me. But I noticed nobody really commented on what I could put here, so I'm just going to put some like 1 inch of that like black pipe insulation, just like a chunk of it, you know, probably actually just right here. And then I'll probably just put either some wire ties or maybe some electrical tape around it or something to kind of hold it in place. That one right there I'm really unconcerned with. It's actually still hanging down the same distance and everything as it was before, but I just remember it hanging down like this. I actually remember these hanging a lot further down, so I'm thinking that the insulation that I put up here must have pushed all that up, which is, I mean, that is not a downside to me. And now I'm kind of getting off track a little bit. I realize that. I think that's like the history of my videos at this point. So you can kind of see that there's another piece of corrugated right here. It's pretty flush against the frame though. And it actually goes way back in here. And I'm actually gonna put a little bead of caulk inside here, you know, my favorite thing. So I'm gonna do that. The reason I put this on here is because this is where they cut it. Like this is their corrugated, right? This is where they cut it. And to put it in perspective, just don't forget that water tank. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, that water tank literally comes like to here, the back of that water tank. So this is where this was cut, and then it goes up and around the water tank. That, I mean, here's the tire, right? So that means that this whole area right here, nothing but snow and ice, and then like downpours and rainstorms and all that kind of stuff, just pouring in on these tanks. And it's like that on the other side too. And this axle doesn't move. Like this part here doesn't move, because remember it's a torsion axle, so that doesn't really move anyway. But this right here is actually a 2 inches. If you want to know what that gap is, that's 2 inches all the way across there. And that's with basically 2 inches of insulation added into that mix right there. And this corrugated didn't quite match up all the way, so I've actually got I actually installed an aluminum beam back in there for it to screw into, and that aluminum beam is attached to the original aluminum beam that's there. So, and it's actually all welded. I didn't take any pictures of that or anything. I was just, it's kind of one of those days, right, where you're right on the cusp of being done, and the last thing you want to do is go grab your phone and make a video, because anyway. So that is the underbelly, and there is 2 inches of insulation in that bad boy, and then there's an inch above it, so strips above it, just a muffle sound. And then I did put that let me get through here. I did put that evaporation tank back in, so everything's all buttoned up back there again. I didn't put a washer on this side, but I did put a washer on the other side, because it kind of looked like they drilled a hole out bigger than it should have been. So whatever. You can kind of see, you can kind of see there where there's a little bit of a gap along that area right there. And that's kind of where I kind of pieced everything together right there. I'm actually going to run, let me zoom back out. I'm actually going to run a piece of, along that whole section right there, I'm actually going to run a piece of that, oh man, what's it called? What's it, not the ShamWow guy, what's the other guy? Anyway, so it's like a neoprene, like rubber tape. It's really sticky. Actually it's not going to, I'm going to cut it around each one of the screws so I can actually get the screws out if I needed to. But it'll actually seal that whole section up right there, so no water will get past that. Now don't forget, this is like mold and mildew resistant, water resistant insulation anyway, so technically I could leave it, but I can see it, right? And so it just doesn't look nice, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then, wow, this video is getting long as dirt, dude. And then that's the other section that got bundled up, and then the back section. So anyway, I may make another video of just the front half, because I didn't realize I was going to like get long-winded on this one. But if I do make it, you know, the front half is what matters. The back half doesn't mean squat. All right, well, you guys have an awesome day, and take care.